Good morning, everybody.
Hey, Julie, I know people.
You probably know everybody.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody. Please do feel free to, this is a very, very safe place. So if you want to take yourself off mute, turn your camera on, James and I would absolutely love to see you. It's always good to know you're not talking to an empty room.
It's 5 a.m. in Miami and I do not look good enough to come on camera for that.
All right, you get points for being here. All righty. Perfect. I'm just going to let people come.
Mr. Ashford, are you wearing the jeans? Are you wearing the famous jeans today?
No, I haven't. I've got my new belt on, but I've got cheap, slightly cheaper jeans today.
Are these the jeans that have gone viral on LinkedIn?
I don't know about viral, but yeah, I've been going on about, yeah.
What make are they, James? What make?
I don't know what they.
Jacob Cohen.
Jacob Cohen.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say I've never heard of that.
I'd never heard of them either, Phil, so don't stress that.
I used to work for Levi's, so at one point I was really good on designers and stuff, but
it was the fact that they were they cost me 3 times more. Like I've got a ceiling for things that I'm prepared to pay an amount of money for. So jeans, like the upper limit of my jeans is 100 quid. Like jeans should never, and they're like top end jeans, and these were more than 3 times that. And I'm like, I'm not touching those. And Becky, my wife,
good money.
She convinced me to buy them, saying I look good in them and all that stuff, right? So anyway, I bought them, but then my point was the onboarding and unpacking experience of them was so high end. Like there was a handkerchief and there was a little quote on the inside of the flies. I never knew I needed a quote on the inside of the flies, but it turns out I do. And there was a little booklet about the philosophy and the manufacture of them. There was some threads that I can do lifetime repairs of them. And all of a sudden, what seemed like a large amount to pay, I'd instantly justified it in my head now because this was a very different product that I'd bought. And I went back and bought another pair, right? And the point is the only reason that jeans company can afford to do that versus Levi's, for example, is because of what they're charging for them. But so you have to be able to charge enough to provide the level of experience that your customers are happy to pay for. And so I've been talking for a while now that I think accountants and bookkeepers should charge for onboarding. Like I think if you want to work with us, there should be a fee. So if you think about all that additional work that you have to do to onboard a client, to train them, to learn about their business, to carry out AML checks, like there's a cost associated with that. And people push against it saying, well, I don't feel comfortable charging for it. But if you did, you could actually then afford to provide an experience that would justify you charging for it. So it's like quite an ironic situation to find yourself in.
Yep.
I feel like unless the jeans walked themselves to the washing machine, I probably wouldn't pay more than 100.
Oh, come on.
I have to do that.
Yeah, there's nothing better than a great fitting pair of jeans.
We literally have 30 people in the room. I am so excited to have you all here with me today. I feel like I'm working with a guy who needs no introduction. I did say at the beginning, if you're feeling brave, this is a safe place. It's really great for James and I to know that we're not talking to an empty room. So if you want to put yourself on camera, we would absolutely love to see your smiley faces while we're cracking all of these accounting puns. We'd love to see the audience laughing. So if you fancy turning your camera on, we would both absolutely love to see you. I just wanted to kick off very quickly. James needs absolutely no introduction. I just really wanted to say thank you all for sharing your Tuesday morning with us. I've been really excited for this for a really long time. A lot of people within our community specifically requested Mr. James Ashford, and we were running around behind the scenes to deliver. It kicked off with quite a terrifying Teams call where I told somebody that I know that works for James, Heather Elkington, and I are very good friends, and I was on a Zoom call with Heather and she just dialed James in on a Friday afternoon, and I pooed my pants because I wasn't expecting to see James. She dialed him in, and that's the rest is history. We're here today. So one of my goals for 2023 is asking people for help and not being embarrassed to do that. And I just actually wanted to start by sharing how the webinar came about, because James wouldn't be here today if I wasn't vulnerable and said to Heather, like, I don't suppose you could introduce me to your mate, James. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rachel. I'm the founder of accountantshe. I wear quite a few different hats, but really accountantshe for me is the platform that I really wish I had when I was training to be an accountant, when I launched my business and when I started my own accountancy practice. In the last 2.5 years, I've scaled my practice from a one-man band with 50 clients to a team of now 13 with 650 clients. We hit 650 yesterday, and it has been a crazy ride. We've done a lot of that through the use of free consumable content on social media and actually by working with incredible brands to get financial education in front of the people who need it the most. I just want to ask, if you aren't talking, please to just mute yourself just in case there's any background noise. I'm actually hard of hearing, and people typing impacts the subtitles that I get to see while we're talking, if that's okay. So just thank you so much for putting yourselves on mute. Yeah, accountantshe for me is a platform that I wish I had. For me, accounting, having access to financial education changed my whole life, and I'm a firm believer that it changes other people's too. And so by bringing energy, passion, personality, and a lot of heart to accounts prepared with really high standards has changed my whole life. And so to say thank you for being here today, James has donated his time to us to just spend some time with us. The very best way to say thank you to James and I is to spread the word. Take some pictures while James is talking and he's pulling funny faces, share it on LinkedIn, tag your friends, tag James, tag me. Just tell everybody that you're here today, that you're having a great time, to just say thank you so much to James for his time. We really today are just almost having the content that I desperately crave from James, which is a very informal sort of like fireside chat vibe. So me and James are just going to have almost like a podcast style conversation, and then you guys can submit your questions as we're going, and we will let you guys dictate the direction that we're going in. But something that's been a huge part in James's journey, my journey, I think everybody here's journey, is resilience. Like, we encounter problems every single day. So James, if you had to sort of like summarize your journey with resilience, like, do you have, I feel like you have some cool stories to tell.
Yeah, so I can go back as far as you want and tell whatever stories you want. And today is like, just, it's game on, guys. Like, there's no agenda, there's nothing to sell. It's just here just to try and share some stories and just be useful for you. So we can dive into my stories as much as you want, like I say. But I just Google the word. I always kind of like search words up before I kind of start talking about them, just to make sure that I understand the nuances of the word. And what was quite interesting, it says, you know, resilience is your ability to spring back. And so it's not your ability to avoid problems or to keep going. It kind of supposes that you are going to encounter problems. And the only thing that's guaranteed on any entrepreneurial journey is that you're going to encounter problems, and they're not going to stop. They're going to continue to come. And in actual fact, they're going to get bigger. And with every kind of series of problems that you get, there's a great phrase, which is, for every level, there's another devil. And you kind of encounter a series of problems, and then you have to get over that, only to get to the next level, of which you hope there are more rewards. So if the rewards are not matching the size of the problems you're encountering, then you're probably doing something wrong. But we want those rewards to be commensurate to the size of the problems you're having to overcome, but they don't stop. I remember hearing a podcast with the Airbnb guy, and he said they were currently being kicked out of Portugal, and he was having to deal with the Portuguese government for how to allow Airbnb in there, because the tourist industry was kind of kicking off against it and stuff. And he says, I so wish back to the days when I first started, and it was, how do I get a few customers, or how do I just land a few new properties? Now I'm having to deal with the Portuguese government. And the point is that problems do not stop. They just keep getting bigger, and you've got to keep going as much as your appetite to keep solving those problems exists. And your ability to overcome them is what will determine your success.
I feel like that's something that I hugely relate to. And I feel like everybody does it, where at the time you have a problem, you're like, oh my gosh, this is literally life or death. And then 2 years later, I'm like, God, I wish I had the problems I had in 2020. They were pretty easy to fix. Like, do you do stuff to like keep yourself in check in terms of like how far you've come? Because for me, that's the biggest sort of sign of growth, is you wishing you had the problems that would have like stopped your whole day. Whereas now I'm like, okay, cool, I know how to deal with that. I'll put that on my to-do list to deal with that tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I come into my office here and I went and see my friend next door who I've not seen for a while. And he was kind of, oh, I've got to tell you all these problems I've got, and telling me. And I'm like, and I said, just describe them to me. And he described them. I said, if I'd have presented these to you a year ago, like this was your dream a year ago, and now you're actually living your dream and you're just focusing on the problems. And so kind of helped him to kind of start to think through those and how do we overcome them? And I think the big thing for me, I was just reflecting this morning before this talk, is I think the reason why I've been able to keep going and growing through the problems, and that's the point, is to grow through them, is how I perceive the problems in the first place. So my interpretation of so when a problem happens, and they will continue to happen, how I see that, I believe, differently to other people, and I have a very different way of dealing with that, and how I see myself when I encounter those problems as well. And I think it's those two interpretations. It's not, so you could give someone else the same problem that I encounter, and I would be fairly confident that with my approach to seeing the problem and seeing myself in that scenario, I will get through it and I will keep going.
So come on then, what's your fire extinguisher? How are you putting these fires out?
I don't think you necessarily put it out. I think it's okay for it to be there. But the first thing is, it's not to beat yourself up or to think that you're doing something wrong because there's a problem there. It could actually be a sign that you're growing and that you're improving, you know. So it's not to beat yourself up too much about it. But most people will just focus on the problem. You don't always get to choose what happens to you, okay? And as much of the, you know, we will try and plan, and people see me as a positive person. I actually do something called a pre-mortem. So I will try and plan out the worst case scenario in everything as best I can. So I do try and foresee problems, but obviously things can blindside you. And I also have people around me to help me with my blind spots to try and avoid them. But when I think back to obstacles that we've encountered in the business that have really like floored me, they've just come out like on a Tuesday afternoon, just an email saying, have you seen this? And you're like, shit, what's that? And you're now having to like deal with something that you just weren't ready for. But my ability to say, okay, how am I responsible for this problem is the first thing. So I'm not going to blame anyone for this problem. There's a great phrase, which is, nothing is happening to you, everything is happening because of you. And the moment you can do that, you take responsibility for it, rather than blame someone, rather than come up with excuses as to why this happened. So first of all, I think, how am I responsible for this happening? What will life be like when I get to the other side of this problem? Like, I'm not going to focus on the problem. How can I use this problem to elevate myself? How can I use this problem to improve my situation? How can I use this problem to not only bounce back to where I am now, but to spring forward into a far better position? And here's the ultimate question. How is this problem a gift? How is this a gift? And what will happen is your brain will come back and say, don't be stupid. It's not a gift. You just lost your biggest customer, or you've just lost your key member of staff, or your business partner, or whatever, right? You've got to go back and challenge your brain, your mind, and say, okay, but if it was a gift, if I had to see this as a gift, how could it be a gift? So that's how I perceive the problem. And then how I see myself is to remind myself that I have overcome bigger challenges than this before. I am someone that can overcome challenges. I'm a good soul. I'm a good person. I am on a good path. So even though I'm perceiving this as a problem, very often what we actually mean by a problem is this event that is happening right now is not something I expected. Okay. But just because I didn't expect it doesn't mean say that it isn't the best thing that could be happening to me right now. So I remind myself, I'm a good person. I'm on a good path. I'm trying to do good things for good people. Therefore, maybe this thing is intended for me and I can overcome it. I've overcome other problems before, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to grow. Jim Rohn's got a great quote, which is, I always hesitate before I say a quote because like I'm gonna mess it up, but it's kind of, one second. Don't wish for better winds, set a better sail. Don't wish that there were no problems, wish that you were better. And so it's, how do I focus on me and use this within my gifts, within things that I can control. Because whenever something happens that is outside of your control, there are always 3 things that are within your control. What am I going to choose to focus on? What does it mean? And what am I going to do about it?
The delay was because I was frantically writing that down. I feel like everybody else was as well. So I feel like you are surrounded by accountants.
Yeah.
You're lucky guy. And I definitely feel like our personality type is driven more towards the like anxiety driven when things get outside of our control. And so when we feel like they're fires, or even parts of our business that's warm and outside of our control, I definitely feel like that sort of like ISTJ personality type is driven to fear things outside of our control more. So like, what would your top tips be for, and I like hugely related to almost like an affirmation style of like, I am a good person. Like, just because something's happening to you that's outside of your control, it doesn't mean that you didn't do all of the things to get it lined up. Like, what would your top tips be for like handling the sort of anxiety that can come from things being outside of your control?
Yeah, so I do get what you mean about accountants and bookkeepers. By their very nature, they want everything to be in control and be neat and in little boxes. And I'm sure that if like you're reconciling someone's accounts and it's like a penny out, that like that's going to really keep you awake, right? You're going to want to find that penny. And so that also makes it a real challenge for you as business owners, because the other trait they have is you want everything to be perfect. That's the issue. Now that makes you a great accountant because you're trying to get everything right. But then in business, things can't be perfect. And I think you have to question, where does that desire for perfection come from? And I think where it comes from is you want to avoid being criticized. And so when I want to seek perfection, it's because I want to be beyond the reach of criticism. And a good question, and we don't want to fail. A really good question to ask is who am I afraid of failing in front of? Who am I afraid of failing in front of? There's someone in your life. It could be your partner, could be your children, it could be a parent. And that's where the source of the fear comes from. And it's about having a conversation with them saying, look, you are the source of my anxiety because I'm so afraid of screwing up and being someone less than you want me to be in your eyes. Can we have a conversation about it? And nearly always, if they're a good, loving person, they'd be like, what do you mean? I'm like so proud of you. It doesn't matter. It's cool. And so we have to drop that level of perfection. So one thing I talk about a lot is version 1 is better than version none. You know, another good mindset to have is, I was speaking to someone yesterday who's in our marketing team, and they're looking to improve in their marketing. And we got talking about writing social posts, which I know you're brilliant at, Rachel. So, and I'm saying, she said, but you're so good at it, James. You're really articulate and you get your point across well. I'm like, I nearly failed English at school. It's like my worst subject ever. My grammar is terrible. I write like I talk. The only reason I think I'm seen to be good at it is because I do it every day. But what you've got to do is, so she said she thought I was great at it. So I'll take her words. I was great at it. That's very kind. Thank you. But I started at crap. I then moved into average. I got into okay, got into good, got into better, and then moved into great. You can't jump to great. I said, the reason why you're avoiding doing these social posts is because you're waiting for things to be great. Again, and if you hear me say anything really good, by the way, guys, any really good phrases, I will have stolen it from someone far better than me. So here's another one, which is, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start if you want to become great. And you have to be prepared to pass through those seasons. And in those seasons, there is a likelihood that you are going to be judged. And if you have that desire for perfection, if that's in your box, and so you're avoiding that is going to prevent you from passing through those stages. I know I've completely avoided your question, which is, how do you kind of manage it and how do you overcome it? And I don't really know. I think having that conversation with the person that you're afraid of failing in front of is a good one. And the other one is a large part of being positive and feeling that you can move forward is just getting rid of the negative out your life. Like, you don't necessarily have to have mantras or be motivational or have ice baths every morning or be up at 4:30. If you can just get rid of the crap, your natural default is to be hopeful and optimistic and happy and to get to where you want to be. And when I say get rid of the crap, it normally involves people. Like, just be careful of the people you have very close to you. And when I think back to kind of stressful times in my life where I've had to work through something, it's at those times when I tighten my circle the most, and I will block people out. I don't care if I'm ignoring them. I don't care if it's my parents, brother, I don't care who it is. I will block them out, and I will assemble the team around me that I know that can get me through this. The word peloton comes from cycling, which is the peloton is the group of people around the lead cyclist. So in the Tour de France, please correct me if I get this wrong, but you only need your lead cyclist to get over the line in time. It doesn't matter where the rest of your team is and the rest of the pack. So they have a very deliberate job, which is to protect you from the wind, to protect yourself from competitors, to be cheering you on, to part the way. And then as they get clear, they move out the way and you go over the line. I've become, especially over the last couple of years, very intentional about that peloton that I have around me and very mindful of who I share my big dreams with. If you want to kill a big idea quick, share it with a small-minded person. I am very careful of who. So when we went through the business sale, for example, of Go Proposal, I had close family members that did not know I was going through that process because I couldn't have them in my head. And it's not that even they're like bad people, and they may be saying things that you see as negative, but they're saying it from a position of love because they don't want to see you get hurt. But either way, I've got no room for that in my life. So being very careful of who I have around me. And I say to people, like, you either need to remove people or manage people. So if it's your mum, right, and you can't get rid of them, then you might just need to manage them and limit what you share with them or the time you spend with them or what you talk to them about. Other people, you may just need to remove them. There are 8 billion people on the planet. You might just need to find some better people. I
just relate. I feel like I relate to everything you said so much, and like everybody who has their cameras on just like nodding and writing. That like shedding people around you thing is, I feel like I just want to say thank you so much for like saying that stuff out loud, because it's something that I've experienced hugely over the last couple of years, but it's something that I have never heard anybody else talk about out loud. And so I felt like I was the only person who felt like an island, and like I feel like I've intentionally made myself an island, and like it requires an exchange of energy to bring somebody onto that right now would take my focus away from something that I've decided is my number one priority. I've written down like, if you can't remove them, manage them, because again, just hugely relatable of having people in your life that you're like, well, it's quite frowned upon if I remove my mother from this situation. So actually managing this relationship in a way that serves me is most important. The pre-mortem, I just want to come back to the pre-mortem. So we do something in our board meetings called Why Am I Dead? Which I think is the same thing, like the same exercise of sort of like catastrophe planning. And I've always said that like I feel like quite a high functioning sort of anxiety person, but it actually means that I am very calm in an emergency because I've already anticipated every single negative outcome that could possibly happen. So if I'm watching my husband play football and someone hurts themselves, straight person, like first person there, I've already anticipated the worst.
You've got the first aid kit in the car, you've got the route to the hospital, like you're all good.
That pre-mortem, do you have an official process for that? For us, it is part of our board meetings that when we're going through our risk register, we actually do sort of like, why am I dead? And actually normally the why am I dead is a lot further away than I think it is.
Yeah.
It actually calms my mind down doing why am I dead.
Yeah. So where I first learned about this, I guess, was there's a guy called Edward de Bono who developed the concept of lateral thinking. And he has a book called 6 Thinking Hats, which is a really short book. And it's just allows you to think through problems and scenarios in 6 specific ways. And one of them, the black hat, is the negative hat. What's everything that can go wrong, etc. So you think through that scenario there. And then recently I've learned the phrase pre-mortem, but I've always done it. And people see me outwardly as a positive person, but I do have this side of me that will catastrophize beyond any level of catastrophizing anyone else can do on this call. I promise you. Like, where I take it is horrific. Like, I daren't even share my thoughts about how bad I believe things can get in certain scenarios. And I will have gone through all that. But then it allows me to maintain a level of positivity. And I think I wind people up around me, and they see me as like flighty or able to make fast decisions. And they're like, I think they think, if they don't know me, that I'm being whimsical and taking risks and stuff. And it's like, no, I've just been down every route that most of them you won't even think about, that are so negative that I'm quite comfortable with this as the next step. And I've got people around me who love me enough to point out my blind spots to me. Julie knows my wife on this call. She rang me up the day, Becky, I can't remember who it was. This is my wife. And she said, you're probably not going to like what I say next, but there's something that you need to hear. I'm like, so I just started laughing. I'm like, go on. And then she just told me a blind spot that had been winding her up. I can't actually remember what it was. I think it's that I don't listen well enough. But my point is she feels comfortable with revealing my blind spots. And I have people, like I say, who love me enough and who I love around me, who will reveal those blind spots to me. And you need that, because however good we are at thinking through those scenarios, we do have blind spots. And unless people point them out to us, they will cause us collisions. Again, I don't know if I actually answered your question there, Rachel, but it's just a healthy part of a process, I think, to socialize where is everything that can go wrong with this. And if it does, what then? And what then? And what then? And you nearly always get to a point which is, it's okay. It nearly always ends up, whatever you do, at a point where we're okay. But what if we lost our house? We'd have to move back in with my parents and we'd be okay. Like, it's always, we'd be okay.
I love that. I'm being very selfish. I have like 17 questions that I've written to ask you, but the chat is also full of questions. So Mr. Jonathan Stobart has asked, how do you see and or advise accountants to recognize their mistakes so that they can learn from their experiences and make improvements?
Let me read that question again. How do you see or advise accountants to recognize
How do you help
mistakes?
accountants to recognize their mistakes and learn from them?
I don't know. That's a good question. That I think we need to. We need that time to reflect, and I think you need other people to help you to reflect with that. So I've had mentors or people who've, like, non-execs who sat on the board or whatever, but you have to carve that time out to. And the other thing that you said, Rachel, which is about how far you've come as well. So a good thing to do is, like, you know, what am I proud of having achieved? Yeah. What could I be doing better, and what am I going to do about it? They're just three really, really good questions, you know. But if you're going to focus on the mistakes and learn from your improvements, you also need to know what you're grateful for and what you're doing well, because that can also be the platform of which you're going to improve. So I would say it's three questions. What am I doing well that I'm proud of? Like, none of you on this call will do that, because I don't do it. Like, you if you imagine, like, you're climbing up a mountain, you're going up a real struggly part, and you get there and you get to this plateau and you don't even bother to turn around and look at the view or have a Snickers bar or a cup of coffee or whatever. You just, like, catch your breath and then crack on with the next part. It's like, stop. What you've just come up was amazing. You've just achieved it. Just let's take in the view for a second, celebrate it. We're all crap at celebrating. Go and treat yourself to something. Mark this moment in time with something that actually recognizes this achievement, recharge yourself, and then let's kick on with the next thing. So I think it's to recognize your mistakes is fine. I think it's just a recognition of the journey in general that's the bigger issue. You know, everything that you've done well, what could I have done better? And what am I going to do differently moving forward? That's it. That's the principle of Kaizen, which is a Japanese term, which is just about continual improvement. And you're not in competition with anybody else other than yourself last month, last year. And all you're trying to be is incrementally better. We don't need to make huge leaps. It's very often just kind of 1 or 2 degree shifts that over time will take us to a better place.
I love that. We've actually had a good segue into the next question. So Julie has asked, James, what advice would you give for overcoming imposter syndrome when growing and developing yourself and not allowing it to hold you back?
Yeah, you can't. And I've learned this recently, right? So I watched this really good video, and it was about this guy had studied what are the 3 traits of successful people. And he didn't start with that. He started to look at what are the traits of successful people. And he kind of wanted to, in his head, he wanted to say, they're super fit. They all wake up at 4:30. They all take a ice plunge first thing, whatever, they fast. And he was like, no, some people stay in bed till late. Some people get up early. Some people are fit. Some people are unhealthy. Like, there was no similarities between these successful people, with the exception of 3 traits. The first trait was they had a big goal, probably too big a goal than they should be having. So it was beyond that, a goal beyond your current skill set. That was the goal. So you dare to dream bigger than you're able to achieve right now, right? The second trait was a complete sense of inadequacy, feeling like you're an imposter and you have no right to be here and to even be thinking like this. And it was the paradox and the pull between those 2 things were actually critical. And so if you have imposter syndrome, you need to make sure that you're setting that big goal as well. And then you have to accept that that is your curse. And you flick between the 2 things, which is, I'm the most incredible, best person ever in the world, capable of achieving incredible things. And I hope nobody finds me out because I have no idea what I'm talking about and I'm completely winging it. And you kind of need that fluctuation between the 2. And the final trait, the thing that connects them, is complete focus and continual, consistent focus relentlessly for a prolonged period of time until you get there. And it's that final ability to remain focused that connects those 2 things together.
You're blowing my mind. Philippa actually has a sales question, which I'm very, very excited to ask you, because I feel like lots of people worship you as a god in the sales part of accountancy. So Philippa has asked, sometimes the big problem is actually quite small. I have a particular client in mind who is very anxious about offering value in their business as they expect their client to say no. Do you have any advice at this level?
Yeah. It's a really big question to unpick and unravel that, I'm afraid. So it's probably not something we can quite do on this call. I do discuss it in depth in my books, so you could read through those, and not even all of them. I'll send you links I'll send you links to share, actually, Rachel, if you want to share them. So I'll send you links to the audiobook, and I'll just earmark the relevant mindset chapters to focus on. But, I think it comes from a feeling of, and this is the source of all fears, all depression, all anxiety, all addictions, all kind of behavior you're not necessarily happy with, comes from the question of, am I good enough? And the one below that is, am I enough? And when you're asking that question, then whatever you're about to do is going to be really challenging. And that's kind of the lowest point that you can get. And at that point, you will start thinking, well, am I good enough? And the moment you ask that, because your brain is brilliant at answering and will do exactly as you tells you, as you ask it, it will start telling you, no, you're not, you're crap, you've never been good enough, that teacher said you were crap, your parent used to, all of a sudden now, all these voices that we think are ours that are not, start to cascade on us. And who are you? What right do you have, Rachel, to run an accountancy business? You're young, you're a woman, you're in this rural area that could only attract this level of clients. You don't have any right to grow a business. Why do you have staff? And all of a sudden, you cascade all of these thoughts on top of you if you start with that question of, am I good enough? Because the answer will come back no, unless you switch the question so subtly to, how am I good enough? And the moment you ask that question, you put the word how in front of it, and you send your brain off down that route, it will start coming back with all of the ways that I am good enough. And you'll start coming up with a very different set of answers, which is, I'm full of energy, I want to help people, I'm constantly learning, I'm trying to grow, I'm trying to do better, I'm wonderful at contributing, I care deeply. And all of a sudden, you find all these answers that make you incredible. So you have to be cognizant, very, very mindful of those questions that you ask yourself quietly, that you don't even know you are asking, because it's in those quiet moments of kind of despair where, if you just unpick it, I would suggest it's those type of questions that you're asking that lead to actions like that. And we just need to take control of those questions.
That's incredible. So you did mention your book. So the next question, Layla has asked James, what are your favorite 3 books? Everybody get your pens out.
Who asked that? Who said that?
Layla.
Oh, hey, Layla. Well, I did do a post on LinkedIn recently about my 28 top books, and I kind of split them out into groups of 4 and try to diagnose them. Say, are you looking for like marketing issues? They're my best 4 there. Is it mindset issues? Well, they're my best 4 there, etc. So I try to diagnose them. So we can dig that link out and you can share it if you want to. I always like The Alchemist as kind of my go. I've not read it for a while, but it's like a book I constantly return to. That's quite magical, and it was just like one of the first books that just stopped me in my tracks and made me just devour the book very, very quickly. Jonathan Livingston Seagull is like a book that I got introduced to in later life. I make sure my kids get to read it, but just to believe that, you know, the premise of the book, not to give too much away, but is that most seagulls fight over the scraps. But what Jonathan Livingston Seagull realized was that he can fly really high and really fast. And if he could do that, then he could soar down and then dive into the water far deeper and get far greater riches than anyone else. But you just can't be fighting over the scraps with everybody else. So I just think they're really good reminders. And then what else are we going to go for?
Go on, give us the James Ashford one.
I can go for mine, but I don't think I've actually read it. I read it out loud to do the audio version, but I've not read it since. But I guess I kind of know what's in it, so I don't need to read it. But yeah, my Selling to Serve and Untapped are the 2 books. Selling to Serve is getting your mindset about selling and understanding why it's a healthy thing and your ethical obligation to do that. And the big thing that I do with accountants that I found is that it's not really about giving them anything new. Like, you're not necessarily going to learn anything new there. It's helping them to uncouple themselves from all the bullshit that they feel they need to hold on to that's actually holding them back. And if they can just let go of that, they actually have enough about them and enough ideas and everything. And it's like, just go with it. Like, you know, all these ideas and things that you're thinking, you're probably right. You might just need a little bit of steering, but you're good enough. You go for it. The thing that's holding you back is not that you don't know what to do, or not that you're motivated, or your ideas aren't good enough. It's that you're holding on to things that you don't need to be holding on to anymore. So the biggest work I think I do is uncoupling them from that. And that's kind of what the books do. And then this one is about how to go back to your existing clients and charge greater fees. But the 80% of both of those books is mindset. So I was with my PT yesterday. She came around to our house to train my wife and I, and she's struggling with charging her clients. And like, people keep canceling sessions with her. She's scared to increase her fees. I'm like, come on, let's sort this out. What are you doing? Like, I need you to read these 3 chapters before you come and see me next time. I'll show you how to increase your prices. We're going to get everyone on monthly recurring billing. Let's sort this out. Let's take control.
I love that. I'm going to start firing questions at you because we've got a lot in the chat.
I'll be fast.
So,
I'll reply quicker.
Amazing. So Eddie has asked, morning James, when you started Go Proposal, what were the first building blocks / team hires you got in place to start that journey?
The first building blocks were, a big fan of systems, so I've created playbooks for everything. So I would not bring anybody on board unless I had a playbook for how that role or that task needed to be done. And then I'm not bringing in roles, I'm bringing in people to be able to deliver those results and those outcomes based on those playbooks. And then people will then evolve those playbooks. So effectively, what the playbook is it ensures that my standards are met. The thing that prevents you from achieving the results that you want is your standards, or you're allowing your standards to slip. I have unreasonably high standards that I will not allow to slip. So you've got to get those, the playbooks in place. And then my first hire was Jack, who was on customer success. So effectively, my question that I asked myself is, what is preventing me from working at my highest level? What is the most value I can bring to this business? What is my highest level tasks that I can be doing? And what is the thing that's preventing me from doing that? because that's what I need to take away from me. So Rachel, for example, like in your role, I spoke to Heather before I came on this, and she said, Rachel's just incredible. I'm so excited that you're talking to her. Like, she achieves so much. I don't know where she gets her energy from. She's producing this incredible content, and she's managed to elevate herself into this position where she's doing that. But you can only do that if you brought in the people. You've got to identify where you bring the most value, and you've got to identify what's preventing you from doing that and bring those hires in around that. I'd
also say, like, I just hugely related to that level of like imposter syndrome, and the traits of amazing people are that overwhelming sense of imposter. So like when people say to me, oh my God, why do you get up so early in the morning? Or like, how do you clear your inbox before other people start work? And I'm there like, well, you're all better than me. I have to get up 2 hours earlier than you to even get close to competing to where you are. And then those are the same people that are saying to me like, wow. And I'm there thinking, well, I get up early because you guys are all way better than me. Like, that's why I get up early, is because I'm overcompensating because I'm not you. And they're asking me like how I'm doing stuff. Great. I just, so Laura Day Henderson, hello Laura, has said, does James have any tips on how to bounce back from something that knocks your confidence so that you can use it to fire you to propel forwards rather than retreat back? I feel like we're going to get another seagull story, and I'm very excited about it.
So I guess it depends about things that, how big a thing that, how large it is and how much you've been knocked. So let me go to an extreme where it's so big, you're having a meltdown, right? And there's a great book, I've forgotten the title of it, but it talks about having a meltdown. And what it talks about in the book is that sometimes you need to melt down. Like, don't fight the meltdown. You sometimes need to fully melt down. And what it explains is that the caterpillar in the chrysalis becoming a butterfly. I always thought that the caterpillar, the green squishy caterpillar, kind of shrivels up into kind of like a black version of itself and then sprouts the wings out of it and bursts out. That's not what happens. The caterpillar fully liquefies in the chrysalis. It turns into a soup, and the imago cells, which is trying to create the new image of the butterfly, has a battle with the caterpillar cells. So they have this battle. So this soup starts to move towards becoming a butterfly. Then it moves back towards being a caterpillar. And it goes backwards and forwards until eventually the imago cells win and the butterfly emerges. It wouldn't have happened had it not fully liquefied and fully melted down. The next bit, just to add an extra bit of fact on this, butterflies have teeth. What? Butterflies have teeth, and they bite their way out of the chrysalis. There is a direct proportion between the amount of struggle it takes to bite its way out and how long it lives for. The bigger the struggle, the longer the butterfly lives for. If you were to, when you see it trying to get out, were to cut the top off and allow it to come out, it would die straight away. It needs the struggle. It needs the meltdown. So all I would say is, like, all those other things I said about how do you bounce back, get good people around you, ask where is the gift, all that type of stuff. But don't feel that you need to bounce back straight away. You might just need to get under a duvet and watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang for a couple of days and eat crap. Do you know what I mean? Like, you might just need to fully melt down before you emerge.
The two things I'm taking from this is that butterflies have teeth, and that the only thing better than Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang sing-along version.
Yeah, I like Columbo specials. I don't know why, but if I feel poorly on a Saturday, like, Columbo specials are just my default TV watching.
I love this. Wendy's asked, I struggle to communicate news to prospective clients like we are not right for you. I feel awful in communicating, sorry, you're not right for us. Any advice on how I can do this better, or delivering such news in conversations like that?
It's a good one, Wendy. Hey, Wendy, we've spoken a lot before. I admire Wendy a lot. She's great, and she's been working with us with GoProposals for quite some time. I think having difficult conversations with people in general is the big issue, and we become afraid of having conversations, whether it's with our partner, whether it's with a member of staff, or about a customer that they need to leave or whatever. I think we typically avoid having hard conversations, and we need to get better. We need to be able to give candid feedback to people. And my only advice, I think, in that is, if ever you have a hard conversation to have with someone, communicate your intention first. So, because when you're having a hard conversation, they don't know where you're going with it. So explain. So for example, I remember having a conversation with a member of staff, which is, look, I really think a lot about you and I want you to stay working for Go Proposal. You have so much to give and I see us working together for a very long time together and you earning significantly more than you are doing now and bringing more value. However, your behavior over the last 2 weeks is not acceptable. And if it continues for one more week, I'm going to sack you. Do you understand what's going to happen? But I've communicated, I don't want that to happen. So in this, it's like the intention first is, I want the very best for your business. I want you to succeed and thrive. And I want you to be able to work with an accounting partner that's going to give you everything that you need. You clearly have very strong ways of wanting to do things with regards to your financial system. However, and I admire that you've arrived at those conclusions. However, the way that we do things is quite different to what it is that you want. So I don't believe that we would be the right fit for you. So I hope that you can go and find someone that will adapt and adjust themselves to you. However, if you were to work with us, it would have to be this way and we're not going to move from it. So I wish you all the very best. So I think it's just communicating that you wish success for them to start with.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I'm just going to keep moving really, really quickly. We've got two more to get to. So Babs has said, I'm currently in a credit controller role without any qualifications. I'm looking to step into an AAT course and a role that provides study support. Do you have any advice for me? I think I'm too old to take that step, and any tips for getting a role that I'm qualified by experience and not in qualification?
Yeah, so loads of doubt coming into there, wasn't there? So, you know, doubt about the word qualification being into there, and to feel that you need it. You probably don't. You know, your experience is far more valuable. No one has ever asked for my qualifications. I just demonstrate value. So no one is ever going to judge you. You don't judge a tree by the fruit that it talks about. You judge a tree by the fruit that it bears. And so it doesn't matter what qualification you've got or what you say to people. It's ultimately how you can help them and how you can serve them. And you can do that by demonstrating it very quickly. The age thing I find very interesting. And I talk to a lot of people about this. We have, you know, I speak to accountants who are in their 50s or 60s, and they always have this kind of like pang of regret as they're talking to you, because they're like, I wish I'd, you know, they're experienced and they're hungry and they're up for it. And they wish they would kind of achieve this earlier on, because I'm going to retire soon. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Why are you retiring? Like, where have you got this mindset from, which has been ingrained in them since they were a child and they saw their parent retire at 65? I'm like, you're brilliant. You love what you do. You're going to live far longer and be far healthier than you can imagine. Like, you're going to be a fit, active 90-year-old, and you love what you're doing. So why do you want to stop? Like, you could work 1 day a week, or you could work 1 week a month in your business if you could set this up in the right way. So stop thinking so you're 60 years old and you're thinking in the next 3 years of what you need to achieve. Screw that. Think in terms of the next 30 years. And the moment you switch the horizon up, it completely changes what you're able to do. I was speaking to someone, a 30-year-old, who was kind of beating themselves up recently because of they thought they should be further ahead. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm like, you're so much further than I was at 30. Let's plan the next 50 years out, where you're going to be at 80. And the moment you flip the horizon, it's like so much is now achievable and so much is possible. So the person asking that question, it's about getting rid of those negative kind of thoughts as to what's holding you back, because they're not needed, you know.
I love that. Final question has come from Heather. I'm really, really interested to see your answer on this one. So Heather has said, good morning, advice for inspiring staff who are part of the furniture, who are not on board fully with the target/mindset of the business owner. So like
Goals.
They ignore goals, targets and deadlines.
Next, move them on. No, I'm joking. So in there, you put goals, targets, deadlines, ignored, etc. So the biggest thing here is to establish, you've got to establish your core values. Now, normally when people talk about values, it's kind of an exercise you do with a business coach, get shoved in a drawer and never used again. I've worked with values so closely with so many businesses, and I'll explain the importance of them. I've got a couple of minutes to explain this.
Yeah.
Okay. So values are an extension of your personality, the business owner. and what you stand for and your standards, and how you give the rest of that's your company culture, sorry. And that's what your company culture is, an extension of your personality. It's your company's personality. That culture is underpinned by your values. So the values are guiding behavior. So what you've got in there is words around kind of goals and deadlines, etc. But it's the behaviors of people that you've got to guide. And those values guide those behaviors. Now, we established our core values from day one. Before I brought in any member of staff, we had our set of core values. So to demonstrate that you care, to always operate above the line. And here's another one. People use values and they'll put words in there that sound good on a poster, but they don't mean anything to anyone. So whenever I see the word integrity, I'm like, no one knows what that means. You might as well scrap it, because the definition of integrity is always do what you say you're going to do. That's it. So one of our values is always do what you say you're going to do. Now, our values are not optional. You have to take them all on board. You can't pick and choose. They're not optional. If you don't understand them, I'll work with you to help you to understand them, and I'll train you and help you in them, but you can't go against them. As the business owner and as the business leader, to use the bus analogy, you've got to set the destination very clear on the front of the bus. People need to know where they're going. So you need that level of transparency. Otherwise, as you pass through kind of gloomy, scary areas, they'll become nervous. So they need to know where they're going. But then you need to guide that behavior on the bus. And your job as the bus driver is to keep driving. Sometimes people need to get off because there's someone at the next stop who needs to get on, who won't get on while ever that person's still on the bus. And so a bus driver doesn't get upset when someone rings the bell and says, I want to get off. It's like, yeah, crack on. I'm just going to keep driving this bus. The way I think about it is, imagine people pushing the rock up the hill. So pushing that business up the hill is a constant struggle. If you were to take your hands off it, it'll roll back down. I need everyone behind that rock, which is essentially those behaviors underpinned by the core values, driving the rock up. You get people stood watching it, thinking, well, I'm not pushing it. I'm just here to be employed. It's not my job to push the rock up the hill. And it's like, fine, but you're going to be left behind. You have people pushing the rock back down the hill. They're kind of really obvious, those. And I don't mind those so much because you can quickly plow through them. If you just keep getting everyone behind the rock, you can move over those very quickly and they've got to get out of the way. Kind of feel the worst people are the ones who have the hands on the rock, but they're not doing anything. If you took them away, nothing changes. And you can spot them because they say the word, yeah, but. So a yeah, but is a no in disguise. So they sneak under the wire because they say yeah, but, which makes you think they've said yeah, but they're saying but. So they're either, they've got their hands on the rock and they're not pushing, but they're also elbowing people to the side and causing that toxicity. When I've seen this happen in the accountancy firms, and what will normally happen is they will probably be the highest performer. They may be bringing the most amount of money, and they're the worst culture fit in your business and the most toxic person, right? So you daren't get rid of them because of because of what you think will happen if you do, but you absolutely need to. And I've seen this in an accountancy firm that I was working with very closely, where this guy kept causing issues, was very toxic, going against new initiatives, causing loads of problems. And the business owner was kind of complaining to me, and I was consoling him and giving him advice as to what to do. And I said, ultimately, now you're at this point, this person has to go. They have to be removed from the business, regardless of what you think is going to happen next. And I promise you, there'll be huge relief when you get rid of them. And he says, I just can't. I said, right. Well, you can now no longer complain to me about this person or anything that they do. You have to accept full responsibility now for every action, because you are not taking the action that you need to take. This is now all on you. And eventually they remove the person, the business started to grow. That's the biggest issue, but you can't do that until you define those core values. A brilliant place to start is Delivering Happiness. It's a book by Tony Hsieh, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but he built the company Zappos and sold it to Amazon for several billion. But he will explain the principles that you need in play around core values. Take theirs as a starting point. Don't reinvent it. Take theirs and shape them up.
That was amazing. I've just emailed myself a list of word vomit that I was writing down as you were talking. Amazing. I would just really love to encourage everybody, if you want to like take yourselves off mute, to just say thank you to James, or just pop a thank you in the chat. James, we are really, really, really grateful. I feel like I benefited a huge amount from having a personal podcast power hour with you, but we are really, really, really grateful. The chat is exploding with thank yous. How can people keep in touch with you? What's the best way to support you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot, so I share lots of ideas and thoughts on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on there. I share more personal stuff on Instagram, a bit more family stuff on there. I've got the books. I'll send you the audio versions through if people can bear listening to me any longer, and I'll just highlight kind of the mindset chapters for people to kind of dive into. But just to say, like, you know, I am not an expert. I am work in progress. We're all just learning and figuring it out. And to my mind, I love what you're doing, Rachel. I love the community. I love the energy and effort you put into creating this group, because to my mind, it's all about having the bravery to throw a hand up and say, I need help, and I need someone to help me to move forward, and throwing the hand up, and for us to be able to contribute and help each other, and to throw a hand back down saying, well, I've got to this point in this, I'm going to grab you and I'm going to help you up here. And I think what you do and what you share, and the community that you've built is wonderful, and it encourages that exact action. So thank you to you for inviting me, and for the work that you do.
Back at you. Thank you everybody so much for joining us today. Yeah, we would both absolutely love to see you on the internet where we do our things, and yeah, have an absolutely amazing day. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.